On this episode of the Unnamed Political Podcast, is the world ending?
Yes.
No.
Rarely is the question asked, is our children learning?
My fellow Americans.
Corporations are people, my friend.
Our country is in serious trouble.
I did not send classified material, and I did not receive any material that was marked or designated classified.
But man is not free unless government is limited.
Bringing you opinions on historic, current, and international politics. Welcome to the Unnamed Political Podcast.
Hello, welcome to the 24th episode of the Unnamed Political Podcast. I'm your host, Jack Horvath.
I'm your host, Clark Walter.
Today we'll be discussing a range of issues, including the economy, the Republican debate, the recent Republican debates, and Obama's most recent State of the Union.
Yes, all big issues, and because of those big issues, we've decided to go formal. Mainly because Jack decided to learn how to tie a tie and forgot to take it off, so I have to go equally formal to combat him. Alright, but let's start with first things first. The economy, arguably the most important issue in the minds of Americans other than terrorism. Now, well, it is.
It's true.
Polling. Now, the economy recently seems to not be doing so well. So one of the questions that many Americans have been asking, and not the question that is rarely asked, is the American economy on the verge of collapse?
Yes.
No. The American economy is not on the verge of collapse. However, the American economy is not doing very well. For instance, the most recent cover of The Economist.
Yay.
While not specifically mentioning the American economy by name, the picture of Xi Jinping riding a falling dragon subtly implies that China's not doing so great, which also subtly implies that the U.S. on a whole is not doing great. However, the China's economy, according to China, has been doing fine. To quote the Premier of China, Mr. I hope I pronounce this right, Li Shengshang, has said, and I quote, for all of you Chinese people who have no idea what I said, and you Americans who understood even less...
Chairman Mao?
Yes, Chairman Mao is the only one on this in the entire world who can understand that. So that's why, after popular demand, we may be bringing him back sooner than I wanted.
For his own segment on the show.
Yes, potentially having an own segment. That's to our biggest supporter. Now, he claimed that China's economy has grown nearly 7% in 2015. Most outside sources disagree with this claim. Now, overall, again, we've mentioned this in the past, China's economy isn't on the verge of collapse, like many of our friends have said that it might be. Right. But China's economy is not doing as great. It's not keeping up to what the government numbers have reported. But when you're dealing with a communist dictatorship, you can't really, with the party controlling everything, you can never really trust all the information coming out of it. But information that hopefully can be a bit more trusted is the Wall Street Journal, who has recently posted some statistics on how the U.S. economy has been doing in the first days of 2016. Sorry. Jack?
Well, from that graph, it doesn't look like they're doing so well.
We have
punched.
I just didn't want to totally take over for you.
No, it's all good.
So the U.S. economy has had the single worst 10-day start in recorded history.
Terrible. 391-point tumble.
So that is the Dow going down, bad brothers for sex. So we're seeing... We apologize, we're not quite as affluent in economics as we would like. It's the political podcast, not the economics one. But if we ever get more affluent, we may open one up.
The economics podcast.
Probably not, but you never know. Alright, so we're seeing, unfortunately, the Dow has gone down 500 points. We're seeing that the S&P 500 has declined 2.2%. NASDAQ fell 2.7%. And so overall, this leaves the Dow and the S&P down around 8%, while the NASDAQ is down 10%.
It's huge.
This is not a very good start to the year overall, and one of the major reasons for it, at least in the public mind, is lowering oil prices, which ultimately, it's kind of hard to predict the future, but again, the U.S. economy, it's not near a recession, it's not near collapse, but what we're seeing is this might be a signal for it. We recently saw estimates for the U.S. to have a collapse jump to, I think, 1 in 5. Recently, not to have a collapse, to have a recession, to jump to 1 in 5, which I believe is triple what we saw the previous quarter. And overall, we're just simply seeing that ideally this won't be a headwind, but mainly it is causing fears in many investors, and overall these fears will affect the economy. We'll continue to report on this as this comes out. Report, because we update this like once every
week,
1.5 weeks if we can. But if you guys are willing to be engaged and watch this amazing show,
we'll do it as many times as you want.
We'll do it for you. All 4 of our viewers have gone up.
Yep.
Okay, now moving on to the topic that Jack actually can talk
Here
on.
we go.
Sorry for cutting you out on that.
Oh,
Most
it's
recent
fantastic.
Republican debate, which struck near and dear to our dear friend because there's a Canadian running for president, apparently.
Well, it depends who you think. It depends what you think.
Yes.
But yeah, it's a good question. Trump brought up the fact that the eligibility for Cruz's citizenship. Some argue that he is not a natural-born citizen, while Cruz and many others think he is qualified to run for president. Because, as you know, Cruz was born in Canada to an American mother and a Cuban father, who was technically a refugee, but you can go into wherever you want with that. So I do consider him a natural-born citizen. Do you consider him as a natural-born citizen?
I consider him a natural-born citizen. Personally, I understand why we have the natural-born citizen clause, but I don't really see a total point to it. In fact, I'm not a legislator and I don't want to anger anybody, but I feel like there's no real point in saying if you weren't born in the U.S., you can't run for president. And then with all the different clauses, I feel like you should say anybody, if you're a legalized citizen of the United States of America, you should be able to run for president. This is the reason. It's unfortunate why we haven't been able to have President Schwarzenegger.
Because there's a lot of good people that aren't born in the U.S. but can definitely become citizens and are actually very smart people and maybe could be president.
I mean, we've seen this happen in other countries. I believe, I think it was Mackenzie King was actually born in England.
Yep, Scotland probably.
Scotland, sorry. Tony Abbott, Prime Minister of Australia, was born in London, which has led to his massive popularity after being kicked out in less than half of his term.
But I think Cruz brought up good points that people that were running for president weren't born in America, like John McCain.
John McCain
and
was
Mitt
born in
Romney's
Panama.
father, who was
Mitt
born in
Romney's
Mexico.
dad was born in Mexico. Now, Cruz did have a slight inaccuracy in what he said. He said that Mitt Romney's dad was a missionary, which wasn't entirely
Mitt
true.
Romney's grandfather would be a missionary.
Mitt Romney's grandfather, sorry, yes. They did serve as missionaries for a time, but just to avoid misconception, Mormon missionaries are not allowed to have any relationships with the ladies, and Mormons discourage any form of scootily pooping until marriage.
But they lived in some sort of mission colony, kinda.
Yeah, just to be basic, kind of a polygamous compound.
Yeehaw.
Woohoo! Good old loopholes and legal regulations of the early 1900s and late 1800s.
But that's also, Cruz said that Trump didn't really care up until now, and I think
No,
that's obviously
that's
because
clearly true.
Cruz is doing
When we're
pretty
seeing this
well.
happen. And because Trump is the biggest birther of all, but when Cruz isn't an issue, it's not an issue. When he was running against Obama last year, he was a one-issue candidate. His one issue was Obama was born in Kenya. I don't know why I just gave him a Texan accent there. Sorry,
Kenya.
Texas people. You don't deserve that. But normally we wouldn't report on something so unsubstantive, but it was one of the most interesting debate points when Cruz made the statement that he would seriously consider giving Trump the nomination, as if he's not a natural-born citizen, Trump gets the spot. And also, he brought up a very interesting point about Donald Trump and his eligibility for president.
His mother was born in Scotland.
Donald Trump, according to the most extreme birther theories, cannot run for president, and neither can Jack, but I can.
But Donald Trump deflected it by saying...
But I was born here.
Yeah, exactly, which is one of the dumbest things
Big
I've ever heard.
difference. I think, hopefully, I feel like this debate was not a great showing for Trump. Do you agree? I think it was a bad showing for Trump. I think it was a good showing for virtually everyone else.
I think Cruz did exceptionally well.
I think Cruz, this could be his Cruz whistling.
He got a lot of screen time.
Ben Carson got very little screen time, but he did get in some of the funniest moments of the night. I will give him that.
He's always kind of quiet, and I think he did the same thing.
But I think tonight he was very good at managing to kind of turn some of his biggest criticisms into jokes, almost kind of like with not quite on the scale of, but in somewhat similar to Reagan's. I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I will not exploit for political purposes my opponent's youth and inexperience. Where Carson said, like, "Oh, thank you for giving this question so early. I was nervous. You would just have to wake me up later." Which I thought that was great. That was how you tackle it head on.
And other good points that I brought up, well, this is just things that happened during the debate highlights, is when Cruz questioned Trump's New York values.
That was a controversial event, and that stuck home for me, because this is a guy who was born in the Big Apple.
So yeah, basically, Cruz said to Trump that New York values were like, pro-abortion, pro-gay marriage, and all the liberal things.
Which, I'm one. There's a. I mean, yeah.
It's kind of true. But Rudy Giuliani said, no, that's not us.
Well, I think that also, this isn't great because he's just basically taken a dump on the place where like half of the nation's news comes from, at least half. So I don't think that was a really smart political move.
I think the New York Journal something, or is it the New York Times?
No, it was the New York Daily News who said drop dead Ted.
Yes, and it also said go
but
back
I mean,
to Canada.
they're a tabloid newspaper, so I wouldn't take them seriously. They're the same ones who are like,
well, it's just funny
prayers aren't helping.
Right.
So they're just kind of they're antagonists, I would say. But I mean, so is the New York Post. So
true.
But overall, let's move on to some slightly more substantive things, as we are trying to keep it brief. What else do you think were some of the good points brought up by some of the other candidates? Rubio, Kasich, Jeb, Christie. We haven't mentioned him.
Hey, Christie's cool.
He's come up too, quite a lot.
More stuff on the economy was good to hear. They didn't really talk that much about national security and foreign policy.
No,
They saved that for a debate before, where they was solely
debate.
on that.
They did mention it though briefly, but for the most part, they stayed away from that.
The economy. I agreed with most of what people said. I'm trying to remember what they said about gun control.
I agree with what they said.
Stuff.
I can't remember it, but I'm sure
it was good stuff. I swear. And gun control, same stuff. Because that was
Chris Christie went
topic.
on a huge rant about how pro-gun he was in New Jersey, and then Cruz also brought up an excellent point.
People are saying that how liberal he is, that how he supported Obama.
Mm-hmm. You want to give him a big hug? That was Rand's debate, and Rand was no longer here.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm sorry, Paul. Neither was Carly.
Nope.
But back to Christie, we did see him. He was mentioning how much he blocked 50 caliber rifle bans in New Jersey. I was like, man, I wish I still lived there.
What a place.
Oh boy. Screw you, Jersey Shore. You ruined the reputation of a glorious state. But then we also saw, I think Ted Cruz did bring up a decent point there where he said you would be clinically insane not to endorse gun control at a Republican debate. Mm-hmm. So he said, he wants to say, because then he said, look at the records, look what I've done, and then all the people like Jeb said he has an A+ rating from the NRA, and virtually the exact opposite of the Democratic debate, where having an A+ rating virtually killed Jim Webb's chances of ever getting ahead.
Exactly.
In terms of that. And now actually Jim Webb is eyeing an independent run.
That would be interesting. I kind of like him. He was kind of like a traditional Democrat.
I don't agree with his economic policy, but I mean, he is a war hero.
He seems pretty moderate. And that's something big to say when seeing all the others.
And now also Mike Bloomberg has said he will strongly consider a independent run if Trump gets the nomination.
Pretty moderate Republican, I'd say.
No, very moderate. Mm-hmm. So we could have a moderate Republican, a moderate Democrat become the center party.
What a package.
You never know. We'd have Ross Perot 2.0.
That'd be fun.
You should run again.
Ross Perot?
Yeah, I would vote for...
He's probably like 85 now.
Yeah, we should have Ross Perot and George H.W. Bush come back. They're both eligible.
And Jimmy Carter versus Jimmy Carter?
Oh yeah, actually. We have all these great candidates. We just need to get back in the game. But in conclusion, we didn't touch on all the bigger topics, so let's just try to quickly wrap them up. Marco Rubio was able to come back in and kind of launched on a tirade against Christie, which Christie then brutally shot down, claiming that when you're a senator, you can talk and you can talk and you can talk and no one will hold you accountable, but when you're a governor, you do, which also kind of gave rise to Jeb being able to kind of say, hey, I'm also the governor, and Kasich.
I think Marco Rubio did not do that well, because usually in the earlier debates, he was like, the shining guy, and he sounded very intelligent.
I think he did. I think he'll always.
I think he did okay, but he always used to be like the big winner.
He's the youngest candidate. He appeals he's not like a 29-year-old, but he looks like he's the youngest, the most energetic, so to speak.
Right.
Out of everybody, and I think that helped him. I think Jeb also had a good night.
Yeah, he did pretty well.
He's the next. I would say Jeb and Kasich are the next two guys in the chopping block at this point. It seems if they're going to keep cutting people off per debate.
I hope not Jeb.
I hope not Jeb either. I in fact was waving a Jeb sign at a basketball game last night.
Yeah, if you want to go find it, we might
you want to look
provide a link later.
Local sports television that nobody watched.
There'll be showings.
Yes.
There'll be re-airings. We'll tell you about those. Maybe not.
Oh yeah, if we can get screenshots, you will see them.
Sounds good.
All right, but moving on to probably the biggest thing in terms of both Republicans and Democrats of the past week, President Obama delivered his final State of the Union address. In it, he touched on many different points and on his potential legacy as the 44th President of the United States. So, Jack, what were your thoughts on number 44's finale?
Now, you may disagree with me, Clark, but I thought it wasn't perfect, right?
It was definitely short.
You're not going to see a perfect State of the Union speech that often.
Well, I don't think we've ever seen a perfect one.
Well, that's true. But I mean, I thought it wasn't terrible.
I didn't think it was terrible either.
There were some very good, I think what he was trying to do was trying to, again, get ready for the future, but he was trying to unify. I think he was trying to do that as well.
I feel like he wasn't.
There were common issues. There were common issues you can't really disagree with.
But I don't think, because he even said his biggest regret was that the divisiveness has gotten even farther. And he said he's upset about it, but even in his policy, he kind of said, guys, we need to come together. But we need to come together on the left. Which I kind of
I don't know if that's what he was implying.
That's
Just
what,
to come over and have
that's what I took away.
compromises.
Not that I'm saying all the time to nothing. And I am a big fan of compromise. As Henry Clay said, let us compromise.
But he talked about education and how there should be ways to make education cheaper. Not free like Bernie Sanders said,
Which is
but
good.
to reduce
but
costs.
Ultimately, though, when you're talking about community college, reduced cost, which is free actually, sorry. But when you're talking about different these college plans, reduced cost, ultimately costs, the money to reduce them comes from somewhere. So
Well, that's true. That's true. But not making it free makes it less. And I think Obama made a good point that do you really need, when you make billions of dollars, and they say, 20% income
My
tax
economic
rate,
conservatism is coming back.
you don't need, if you're George Lucas, you don't need $7
you
billion.
You might not need that money, but is it morally right for the government to dictate whether or not you need that money, what you can do with the money that you've earned with what you've produced? I don't think it's right. I'm a big fan of charitable donations. I'm a big fan of willingly donating your money,
but just having it sit there.
No, but it's
You're
ultimately
the
they
economy.
earned that money. They made that money. As Calvin Coolidge said,
I'm not
taxing
taking-
any more
it's
than
not
is
all your
absolutely necessary is theft. Yes, it's not all your money, but
No.
ultimately, but that's the
your
first
income.
step. That's the pathway to socialism. I feel like taxing. I kind of am a fan of the flat tax.
Right.
But even then, when you're looking at raising these tax rates, and I guess you should be a Trump fan because Trump is actually a liberal on everything except
Almost everything.
except for the social issues, which I don't get.
What do you think a good tax percentage is for, the 1%?
For the 1%, oh man, this is debatable. I don't know if we should keep. I don't know if we should keep the
An
tax
economics
rate.
thing is
I
not
don't
the
know
right
if we
way
should
to
go
go.
with. I don't know if we should go with Romney's plan. I don't know if we should go with Ben Carson's 10% flat tax rate.
10%'s a little low, but
Well, Ben
15
Carson's
to
also, if
20%
you
is
cut
not-
government spending, you can also cut taxes. Ideally,
Right.
if you were able to cut spending drastically, you can reduce the deficit, and then if you can reduce the deficit to a point, then you can also cut regular people's taxes, and that can also help spur the economy, which can increase revenue, which then can allow for even more debt to be paid off, which ultimately can solve all the problems in the world. God bless America.
I still don't. 15 to 20% of your yearly income, it's not your net worth, is not ridiculous.
Well, but I'm just saying though, but if you are earning that money, that's
Right.
but what do you think incentivizes a lot of these people?
What,
Do you
just
think
to make you look richer to have all that money?
for a lot of these people, it is a status
Right.
issue. But just the one thing, do you think people would go and say, like, I'm not saying if I can't be a billionaire, I'm not going to work. But with a lot of these people who are making all this money, do you think they went out to make this money with the intent, like when you have Fortune 500 CEOs who weren't the ones who inherited it, who worked their way up?
Worked their way up,
Do you
right.
think they went out and said, you know what, I want to be able to make $5 million so that the government can take away 60% of it? Yes.
That's
I
not
don't think they
necessarily.
did.
No, they go up because they want to, they want to turn out right and they want to get rich and all that, and they want to make millions of
Well, so you
dollars.
need to
But we're not
incentivize
taking
them.
away millions of dollars. We're taking away 15 to 20%.
I cannot believe you're so liberal on this for somebody who has claimed at times to be a Tea Partier.
Right. But
Taxed enough already. And I don't consider myself to be a Tea Partier. I just consider myself I'm fine with a progressive tax rate, not a ridiculous one, but I can understand why somebody might say you need to do it. I understand it's impossible to pass this legislation.
well, 15 to
outside
20% is not a
House.
progressive tax rate
Well, debatably any tax
or
rate.
socialist tax rate.
Debatably, it is a socialist policy in and of itself, and
Right.
any tax rate that is greater than a flat tax is a progressive tax rate, unless you charge the poor more. If you, I want to tax the poor at 75% and the rich at 0.
Right.
But I mean, even then, when you look at it, as they brought it before, even if you taxed every single billionaire and millionaire in this country at 100% tax rate, you still couldn't pay for Bernie's policies. You still couldn't pay for all of our government spending. It's just, it's not economically feasible.
But I don't want Bernie's policies.
You want Obama's policies.
I think
so
we're really.
You want Hillary's policies.
No. I think we need to think for the future, though, like our kids and our children's
My gosh,
children.
you have been indoctrinated, my friend. I think we need to think for
I
our children's
think-
future by creating a strong economy.
I think that's
a
almost-
viable future for our children.
I think that's a very I'm very moderate when it comes to the economy.
You're
Dead center. Dead
you're
center.
liberal. You're a liberal
not a
on
liberal.
the liberal
I'm
on
not
the
a liberal.
economy, far right on the social.
I almost
issues.
sound like Trump now.
Yeah, we got. No,
They
but
got me.
Trump actually raises the corporate income tax rate, and I believe he raises the millionaire tax rate. Like, not millionaire tax. We aren't France quite yet.
Not quite yet.
Yeah, but I mean, when you look at what happened in France, they tax all the billionaires. All the billionaires leave France.
Well, yeah, but the France tax rates are ridiculous, and they are socialist. I'm not
But
advocating
ultimately,
for socialism.
I feel like it's a slippery slope where you have this. We had the same thing where we're saying, like, okay, guys, we should pass these policies. And I actually, don't get me wrong, historians correct me if I'm wrong, but I think actually it was Teddy Roosevelt who did this, famous Republican, but he passed the progressive income tax rate. I love Teddy on a lot of issues, maybe not so much on that. But even then, I can understand why you have it. But I feel when you start to raise it, you're ultimately it's a slippery slope, similar to with certain regulations, certain things. I feel we need less regulations, and as you saw, Kay said she was a big fan of that, regulations.
Well, that was almost 100 years ago when Teddy Roosevelt did that too. The economy's changed a lot.
The economy has changed a lot. But then when you look at other policies, if you want to mention the economy and the people have changed a lot, look at Social Security, one of our biggest expenditures. When FDR put Social Security in place, you get your check when you're 65, that was the average life expectancy. Average life expectancy has gone up by nearly 10 years, but now it's impossible to say, you know what, let's raise the retirement age to 67, which they tried to do in Canada, and I think is one of the major issues that got Stephen Harper kicked out of office. And I'm talking way too fast for you people back at home.
Yeah, I hope they can understand.
Yeah, but back to some. Let's
let's
move off of the economy on this, and let's go on to something less controversial: guns and terrorism.
Less controversial.
Oh, of course, less controversial. So Obama also had an empty seat next to Michelle, or Michelle did, for the victims of gun violence, seen as a pretty obvious political
symbolic.
And what are your thoughts on President Obama's recent executive orders?
So one of his recent executive orders for gun control, wasn't it to close the gun show loophole?
He wants to close the gun hole loophole.
Gun show loophole.
Did I just say gun hole loophole?
I don't even know.
That is also a huge issue.
Tongue
Too
twister.
many guns have holes in them. It's ridiculous. We need to have no guns with holes.
I find that stupid though, because terrorists don't go to gun shows.
Yeah.
I find that kind of
pointless. And also, when we're seeing, I agree with an excellent point I feel made by Jeb at the debate. It's not we need more laws, it's we need to enforce the laws we have.
Right.
And be able to stop saying, because you can put as many laws in the books as you want, and a criminal isn't going to say, gosh darn it, they just banned assault weapons. Well, I'm sorry, I can't rob you anymore. It's been banned.
I've always been open to, more psychological evaluations, because I want to make sure you're like a mentally capable and competent person to use a gun.
I feel that's completely
But taking guns away from everyone, even those that are mentally competent, is ridiculous. And I think that's a big arguing point that Obama fails to address.
And I think, and that's the other thing, and then when you're going after collectors and all these other things, as a person who hasn't
collects guns.
No, I'm not a gun collector, but as a person who's a big fan of history, and when I'm older, when I am old enough to do these things, I would not mind if I had the funds, unless I'm being taxed too much, to collect historic weapons. I don't want to make it impossible to do that.
Good luck buying a gun in this state.
Oh yeah, the state that we are in, which we won't mention, it's hard as heck. Not for Chairman Mao though, who has quite the stockpile at his home. Would we care to show that off in a future episode?
No, let's not go around his house taking pictures.
No, we want to survive.
It might be illegal.
We won't go into that any further. But
no.
Moving away from guns, onto an even less controversial topic: the Middle East. Yeah. President Obama tried to address his policy in the Middle East and stated that he's saying it's going well, which isn't that great. During the State of the Union, 10 American sailors were being held by the Iranian government, which has not helped them very much. But today, the Iranian government and the U.S. government have announced the release of 5 prisoners held by Iran. So, what do you think?
Well, I'm glad that the 10 American sailors, when they were captured, they were released pretty promptly after their capture.
They were forced to make an apology, though, which I think...
That's Iran. Well, technically, they did break the law and go into Iranian waters.
They did break. That's also debatable because the sailors apologized and claimed that they had done it.
It was claimed it was a mechanical issue and the plane drifted there, but they still technically it was their fault.
Plane?
Or I mean, not the plane, the boat, the ship.
Yes. We got the floating planes that we have been using. Well, we do actually.
The Death Star.
Yeah. No, but overall, when I think we're looking at it, I sound like such a tea partier on these issues, but I think that I can understand if Iran did this, but we are seeing Iran doesn't respect us, and the U.S. Army states that you're never supposed to address the media when in uniform, because when you speak in uniform, you are speaking on behalf of the U.S. Army, and to extension, you're speaking on behalf of the foreign policy of the U.S. If a U.S. sailor apologizes, that means the U.S. is apologizing. And if the U.S. is apologizing to Iran, the U.S. looks weaker than Iran. And we can't do that. We need to show that we are the strongest power on earth.
What do you think would have happened if Bush
I'm not
was
saying that
president?
sailors shouldn't have apologized.
What if Bush was president and these sailors got captured? What do you think he would have done?
Bush?
Yeah.
Like right now?
Yeah, if he was president when those sailors got captured.
Well, it would be hard because I don't think Bush would have pushed for the nuclear deal, so
Right.
it kind of goes into a
But
whole...
still, there's no nuclear deal when they got captured. Well, there was a nuclear deal, but that wasn't really part of them getting
But
captured.
seeing a huge opening with Iran, I feel we would have had much harsher things. We might have even potentially had
Air
response,
strikes in Iran,
which is
would
what
have not
Clinton
been
did.
good. Which would have not been good. And I think it was handled. I think
Or not
the situation was
on
handled
Iraq,
pretty well.
not Iran, Iraq.
I think it was
We saw
handled
Clinton.
almost the best it could have been handled, to be honest.
I think, yeah, I'm glad that nobody was killed,
Right.
but I do think this is quite a bit of an embarrassing policy. But now I think we can definitely see Obama's going to be pushing, hey, we got the prisoners out, which I will applaud that. We finally got them out. And now they're saying that they're going to be lifting sanctions, which I am not that happy
Yeah, a
about.
lot has happened in the past 24 hours in terms of Iran.
Oh,
Lifting
yeah, big
sanctions and releasing prisoners.
But overall, I don't think Iran respects us for making this deal. They've already been test firing their missiles within 1,500 yards, or not yards, meters of American aircraft carriers, I believe.
Yeah.
I want to say destroyer there for a second. And what we're seeing is unfortunately, that looks like we're weak because we haven't responded to that. They've been test firing missiles. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing that they simply are saying, well, we signed the deal, you're giving in to us, and now we're going to do what Putin does. You gave in, we're going to push the envelope. Are you going to do anything? Okay, we're going to push it a little farther. You going to do anything? Push a little farther. And that's what it's going to be. And I hope we don't see that.
No.
And so, finally, since we are going quite longer than I think we originally planned, to wrap it up, we may split this into a couple of different episodes just to ease it in there. For
How long are we going, actually? I can check on here because we started...
about almost 30 minutes.
Yeah, 25 minutes, yeah.
All right, what do you think is the biggest legacy of President Obama, and the biggest legacy moment of President Obama's presidency, both positive and negative? Maybe not moment. Let's do moment and overall theme, event, thing. You could say like the economy or something like that.
Well, for an initial event, since it's very recent, I want to see the Iran nuclear deal.
You think that was an accomplishment? You were
Well,
speaking
it's not an
against
accomplishment, but it's his legacy. That's what he's going to be remembered for.
So, do you
bad.
think that's good or bad?
It's bad. Well, I mean, Bush gets remembered sometimes for the financial recession, which is
I
bad.
don't think he sometimes gets remembered. I think
I don't want to
he
remember
only
him
gets
for that, but that's
remembered
what some people remember him for, and not the actual good stuff he's done. Obama's done some good stuff. He's done some
He's
bad
also
stuff.
done some good stuff. I think we do need to give some applause. The economy is doing better. I don't necessarily think that his methods were the best methods.
Right, but he inherited a pretty
He did
bad
inherit
situation.
the worst economy we've seen in decades, and we have seen it rise back up. So you got to give credit where credit is due. And what do you think is so you think the Iran deal is the biggest issue?
I think it's the
Negative?
biggest thing he'll be remembered for.
Okay,
That's
not Cuba?
And, well, his foreign policy in general is definitely a good theme to stick on.
Okay, I think...
His weak foreign policy.
His weak, yeah, that was what I was going to say. I think the Middle East, since you've already said Iran, the Middle East, aside from Iran, is going to be his biggest negative issue. Because we've seen, he entered office with a claim to end 2 wars. He's leaving office with 3.
Right.
So, I think...
Well, technically the war in
Ukraine?
Iraq's kind of over, but...
No, we have 35...
In terms of ISIS.
We have 3,500 troops in Iraq at the moment.
Right.
And we still almost have
Combat
10,000 troops in
operations.
Afghanistan. We have around 500 special operations troops in Ukraine.
Right.
And now we're seeing aggression in the South China Sea. We've seen, in the past 8 years, we have seen Russia and China have slowly started to expand their spheres, which I can understand. They're growing economies. We can't say we're going to force you to be limited to live under the American empire.
Right.
But we are seeing an absent America that Russia and China have started to fill the void of.
I agree. No, his foreign policy will definitely be remembered for not doing enough.
I think he will definitely have one of the most polarized legacies.
Yeah.
And do you think his being the first, just to go all the way back, being the first black president will be a huge deal in the next 20 years, in the next 50 years?
I think it was definitely a huge milestone, but I think we could see more African American presidents, and it'll kind of, the thrill of having Obama going away, of being the first black president, will kind of die down. But I think it's definitely a huge milestone to have, the first African American president. I think that's something else he'll definitely be remembered for.
I think that's also something he'll be remembered for. I think that will be kind of one of the big things that historians will try to, big fans will try to push, because that's something that you can't really say is a bad thing.
Right.
Unless you're Clive Bundy.
That's true.
Sorry, Cliven. Please come on the show. But I also think that when you look at it, it won't be considered as huge of a deal unless historians try to make it a huge deal. Because when you look at, like, at the time, Kennedy being the first Catholic and now the only Catholic president was a huge deal. He had to go and give speeches that he wouldn't be taking orders from the Pope. He had to promise that he wouldn't do this. He had to promise he wouldn't bring his horrible Catholic values into the White House.
Yep.
And that was a big deal. But now most people don't even know he was the first Catholic president unless they know quite a bit about him.
Right.
I think it's the same thing with if Romney had become president. It would have been a huge deal that we had the first Mormon president. And in 20, 50 years, it would have just been another white guy.
Right. Yeah.
But overall, I think he will definitely, Obama's had probably one of the most polarizing presidencies we've seen in a while. Because when you look at Bush, would you care to take that out for us?
Decision points?
Decision Points by George H.W. Bush. Our biggest fan, the one who most recently entered us in the blog, is going to be cringing at this. George H.W. Bush, Decision Points. A second Bible for all of us conservatives.
Turn it around.
Yeah, we got that wonderful photo of him just relaxing there. I think even if you're a conservative, you do have to admit, his second term wasn't the best term.
Beauty.
His first term, I think, was a good term. Yeah. Second, not that great.
His biggest regret should be running for president for a second term.
I don't agree with that statement, but I do think he could have handled it better. And debatably, I feel like the world might be in a bit of a better place if Kerry had been elected, because I think then Kerry would have gotten the blame for the financial crisis, which would have led to a McCain presidency, who I think McCain probably would have been one of the best,
one of the best,
not elected presidents, because he was a big moderate.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, yeah.
He was can we get it back in?
He went both ways in D.C.
Bush fell. Yes, he did.
Boom.
All right. So overall, I think that kind of wraps it up. Jack, would you care to read off our Instagram followers?
I'd be more than happy to.
Now, we did promise that we'd have a guest on in the near future. We were going to have a guest on for this episode. Fortunately, there was a falling out the last minute due to some scheduling errors. We will do everything we can to have Mr. Gabe Mesa on as soon as we possibly can.
Chairman Mao.
Chairman Mao may have a segment at the end if we can convince him to do so.
What if we just gave him his own episode?
We already
just had him sit there by himself.
Oh, by himself? And just show him topics?
Yeah.
That would be interesting. We will look into that. All right, let's see.
Let's
both
go to
local
Likers.
and abroad. Likers, yes. You like our photos, we tell you how awesome you are.
All right, Moth House.
Moth House.
Moth House. That's a
Moths are
local
cool. It's a rank in Star Wars. Grand Moff Tarkin.
Colin C1120.
Colin, it's a wonderful name. Absolutely great. We have famous Collins. Give me a famous Colin.
Colin Powell.
Colin Powell, that was who I was thinking of, but I couldn't quite remember the last name.
Washington State Patriot.
Washington State Patriot. Washington State. Great, good job to be a patriot there, surrounded by all of the pot smoke. I'm joking. But yeah, good job.
KT Master 18.
I don't know what KT is, but is it Kentucky?
Well, maybe.
Master of Kentucky?
Never heard it.
I am the master of Kentucky.
And John
I love you, Kentuckans.
_ Latour.
John Latour.
John Latour.
Cool last name. Cooler than mine.
Shout out to the Unnamed Political Podcast.
Hey.
You're welcome.
Yeah, let's go with one more person, just because shouting out to ourselves is just so uncouth, if you will.
The real Asian Slim Shady.
You sure that's not Chairman Mao?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Real Asian Slim Shady.
Shout out to you.
Keep up whatever you're doing.
All kinds of gains.
Okay.
All right. I think we're done here.
Okay. Thank you very much for watching. Please tell us what you want to see in the future. Please do. I'm Clark Wahlberger.
And I'm Jack Horvath.
We'll see you next time.
Adios.
Oh, and one last thing. Remember to like, share, and subscribe.
For a chance
As
to receive
always.
a shout out in a future video.
Yes. And as always, I'm trying to do a news reporter voice at the end. Do something. Adios.